Hey guys, the Real 2K Insider here. We're going to be breaking down the first major roster update that 2K Sports released for NBA 2K22. 2K was missing 39 players from the game prior to this roster update, so we're going to go make sure that all of them got added. Most of these guys are low-impact two-way players, so for the most part, they aren't affecting the game too much, but you still want them there for bookkeeping purposes. And obviously, if you're an NBA player, you're an NBA player. You want to be in the game. So Aaron Henry's our first one on the Sixers. And also worth noting that this is the first roster with injuries instituted that's going to show up in play now modes, as well as if you start a season with injuries. Shake Milton's got a sprained ankle. Worth noting, Ben Simmons does not have an injury applied to him. The Sixers suspended him for a game for conduct detrimental to the team. It's only for one game, but it's probably going to last a lot longer than that based on some of the reporting that's being done on what Simmons did in practice today. Given this only happened like a couple hours ago, we can excuse 2K for not having him sidelined, as, you know, this was probably done, uploaded overnight or whatever. So this might be your last opportunity to play with Simmons. Looking at Milwaukee, they were missing a couple of guys. We see DiVincenzo's out. He still hasn't recovered from the injury that he suffered in the playoffs. Bobby Portis is about a week away. Ojale and Rodney Hood are expected to miss the season opener. So we get Sandru Mamukelashvili. Hope that was good. Added to the game. They've got him as a power forward center. Realistically, he's like a center power forward, kind of like a mini Nikola Jokic type of player. Think like Enes Kanter with passing ability. So awful defender, but he's going to be able to stretch the floor a little bit, make plays, get some buckets attacking the rim, etc. And the 60th pick in the draft, Georgios Kalaitzakis. I hope that's how you say it. Developmental guy from Greece. They've got him as a small forward. I think he's more of a two-guard. You can see they only have one healthy two-guard on the roster, and the team is loaded with threes. Something I like to do in my roster is just make sure that each team has like three players at each position, just based on how like the depth charts in the game tend to function. And you can see here, same deal with Memikashvili being a power forward instead of a center. The Bucks only have one healthy center. Go to the Bulls. I don't think they have any missing players. Also, I am glancing a little bit to see if there's any rating changes. I don't anticipate there being any, given that we haven't played any actual games yet, just preseason. But if something strikes my eye, I will let you guys know. And worth noting, yeah, Tyler Cook on a two-way. So I think a couple of these guys, they fixed the contracts also. Some of these guys I don't think were on the roster prior to this. All right, so the Cavs are missing two guys, Kevin Pangos and RJ Nembhard. Pangos was on a guaranteed deal, so that was a kind of an egregious one, but he's coming over from overseas. So they typically don't add those guys until opening day, I think for legal purposes. Taco Fall earned the second two-way contract. And you know what? I guess there's another thing to check for is the contract extensions. Notably, Colin Sexton did not get one, but a lot of other players did, as yesterday was kind of the deadline for the rookie extensions to get done. For the first three teams we did, actually Grayson Allen had an extension, so let's check him out real quick. Grayson Allen does not appear to have his extension, so that's something that 2K will need to update. It's something to keep in mind if you are updating or starting a Today, and whatever it's called, NBA Today, or whatever your career modes are. If you want those contracts there, you're gonna have to add them in yourself, most likely. Checking out the Celtics. They signed Broderick Thomas the other day to a two-way, and they added Sam Hauser to the game on his two-way, shooting specialist. They also cut Jabari Parker. And this is silly. Marcus Smart is going to be the starting point guard for this team, and they have his primary position as a shooting guard. So that's something that you are going to want to change. He's been talked about for a while now as the starting point guard for this team, but 2K's, he played the two guard mostly for like the last 2 years next to Kemba Walker, which is why his position is initially at the two guard, but it looks like they didn't change any positions for this opening night roster, which is kind of disappointing because all of this stuff can be easily projected. But moving on to the Clippers, no new players. Kawhi is out for most of the year, and Jason Preston also is out for most of the year with foot surgery. Worth noting, Serge Ibaka I think he missed the entire preseason, but he is technically healthy to play, I believe. Going over to the Grizzlies. Jaren Jackson Jr., another player that signed an extension, which does not appear to be in the roster. Dylan Brooks is week to week right now. And they added Yves Pons, who's on a two-way deal, versatile defender. And kind of the similar roster imbalance that I kind of talked about before. It doesn't make sense for the team to have 3-6 small forwards and then 1-2 guard. Desmond Bane's probably going to be starting at the 2 this year, is my guess. And then you could probably slide over either one of Conchar or Zaire Williamson, is my guess. Or even Jarrett Culver. One of these three, it's going to be clear after the first game who's going to be the backup 2, especially while Brooks is out, as D'Anthony Melton's a backup, like microwave scorer kind of 2 guard anyway. Realistically, in a perfect world, he'd be playing the 1, but because of the presence of like Tyus Jones, they haven't really been able to get a ton of minutes there between Ja Morant's health and Tyus Jones existing. Okay, going to the Hawks. They were missing Sharif Cooper. I think he was the top passer in college basketball, and it should be interesting to see how he plays in the G League, whether or not he can earn a standard contract with this team moving forward. He's kind of like Andre Miller, Kendall Marshall, etc. So really gifted passer, but really terrible shooter. 68 3-point, might not, and 73 mid-range. Like these might even be too high for what he did last year, but like seriously, probably like without a doubt, probably a top 10 passer in the NBA today. Oh, and the rest of their roster, Onyeka Okongwu is probably out until like late December with a neck injury. And TLC made the team out of training camp. Okay, going over the Heat. Oladipo is out for most of the year, rehabbing from an injury. They added Marcus Garrett to a 2-way deal. He's probably more of a point guard, shooting guard. He played point guard in college. Whether or not he does with the Heat kind of remains to be seen. But given their lack of options, I think it's reasonable to put him there. And Tyler Hero blew up the preseason. He had a couple 30-point games. He's maybe like kind of pushing for like 6th man of the year caliber season. And certainly taking a step forward. He's looking at the player that he was in the bubble before he struggled in his sophomore season. So that would be a pretty nice development for the Heat. They're going to need it given how thin they are on the bench. As you see, most of their guys on the bench, like Gabe Vincent and Max Strus, these were 2-way players last year, and now they're going to be occupying prominent rotation spots. PJ Tucker's rating is probably way too low. Did for like Markieff Morris, but that'll hopefully get settled out once the games start mattering and ratings start getting adjusted. Okay, Hornets. They were missing a couple guys on their two-ways, Scotty Lewis and Arnoldus Kulboka. And they cut Wes Owundu from the team as they were one over the roster limit. Okay, going over to the Jazz. No changes for the Jazz. Rudy Gay is out for probably like a month. He doesn't have a timetable yet, but he's recovering from an injury that he suffered at the end of last year. Eric Pascal also, I think, is like day-to-day, so like he's expected to fill some of the load while Rudy Gay recovers, but he'll probably be out for like the first couple games or so. And Malik Fitz, he probably would get some run, if anything. In that case, he got one of their two-way spots out of camp. Sacramento was missing Nimius Queta. He's the fifth string center on the team, so don't expect very much out of him this year. I don't understand why the Kings brought in... well, I think they brought in Tristan Thompson because they were anticipating losing Richaun Holmes, and then Richaun Holmes wanted to re-sign. I don't think they needed to sign Alex Len, and like they're high on Damian Jones. He's a California kid. Like, they want him in the organization. I just don't see, like, Alex Len's probably the guy that they didn't need to bring in, but he's probably someone they also wanted it back in the organization because he played well with the team 2 years ago. My guess is Tristan Thompson gets traded at some point during the year and or bought out. He is an expiring deal and would probably want to join a contender for a playoff run. Worth noting, I would have Terrence Davis at the 2 and Buddy Hield at the 3. I haven't heard whether or not the Kings plan on starting Hield or Marvin Bagley, as that was something they were figuring out during camp. But so far, the way 2K has it constructed, they have Hield looking like he's going to be the 6th man and Bagley as the starter. If Bagley was going to come off the bench, then you would move Barnes over to the 4. But maybe because they have all these setters, like, you don't want to play small, you are kind of going to have to force yourself to play big because of the way that everything's constructed. I think I would also throw a second position on Davion Mitchell, as he's been playing really well, and they're going to want to be able to find ways to get him and De'Aaron Fox on the court. But looking at the Knicks, let's see, where is he? Wayne Seldon makes a comeback after being out of the NBA for 2 years, I believe. He does not have any career stats because 2K apparently could not be bothered to port in his prior version and just made another player from scratch. They do at least list his years pro accurately at 3 years pro, but 6'5", 230. That's actually you're gonna have to adjust his height also. He's a 6'4", listed on the team's official site. As you have to remember, the NBA had Heightgate 2 years ago, where a bunch of players like lost an inch off their official listings because they started measuring players without shoes. So Seldon drops to 6'4". At 6'4", 230, he's basically like they might be looking for like a little bit of PJ Tucker in him. PJ Tucker really changed the NBA and like established that you don't need to be 7 foot in order to play a power forward or center type of role. So teams are looking for, you know, these kind of like low center of gravity type of players who have good strength and can't be pushed around, but also have the versatility to attack the basket or shoot a 3. So we saw a lot of that with like Bruce Brown last year, etc. Seldon's going to fill a similar type of role, probably for the Knicks, which also means that starting shooting guard, like he played small forward with the Bulls the last time that he was in the NBA in 2019. At 6'5", 230, he was already kind of leaning that way anyway. He's probably more of a 3-4 than he is a 2-3. So I would recommend changing his position, as it doesn't make sense for the team to have 5 2 guards. Although Miles McBride also should realistically be a point guard rather than a shooting guard. I can't vouch for the people on the 2K roster team. I don't know what kind of research they do for the rosters, but that's just me. They picked up Lucas Samanish after he got cut by the Spurs. He's on a two-way, and Jericho Sims gets added to the game. He was impressive in training camp. A little raw, probably. Nerlens Noel was, I think he missed all of the preseason. He might miss a game or two, but doesn't have an injury here. And Mitchell Robinson, he played the last game of preseason, played pretty well. The Knicks are hoping for big things from him. He did not get a contract extension and only makes $1.8 million this year, which is a total steal. So he's going to be looking to have a phenomenal year and cash in as one of the top unrestricted free agents on the market next season, or next offseason, I should say. So Jericho Sims might play a lot more than you would think for this team. Robinson and Noel have been beset by injuries for most of their career, and Taj Gibson is 36, and Taj Gibson started for most of the preseason. So that gave Sims some opportunity. It remains to be seen. Maybe he can earn like a standard contract during the year if they are, if Nerlens Noel suffers, a long-term injury or anything like that. Moving on to the Lakers, they had a lot of changes, and they're also going to require a lot of position changes in order to get this team functional. But looks like they added Jay Huff, who they picked up after I believe it was the Wizards who cut him. They picked him up and converted him to a two-way. They added Siko Dumboya on a two-way. Trevor Reeves is going to miss the first 2 months of the year. 6 to 8 weeks for his injury, and then 2 weeks to ramp up and get into game shape. So probably 2 months. That throws the rotation a little bit into a wrench into the rotation, because he was expected to start at the 3, and we see Taylor Horton-Tucker also went down, which leaves him very thin at the 3. LeBron is expected to start at the 4 this year rather than the 3, with Anthony Davis sliding up to the 5. But the injuries to all the wings might throw a wrench in that. We're going to find out later tonight as the Lakers play the Warriors at, I believe, 10 o'clock or 10:30 EST, something like that. So I'll be sure to check that out. Kent Bazemore is expected probably to start at the 3 in the meantime, as he played really well in the preseason with the start and played with the first unit for most of the preseason. Wayne Ellington's going to be out a couple games. He's nursing a hamstring injury, I believe. And the team picked up Avery Bradley late in the, not late in the year, but yesterday. They claimed him off waivers from Golden State. He was with the team, technically won a ring with the Lakers in 2020. But he did not rejoin the team for the bubble, but technically received a ring for being part of the team. So he's going to look to help them get a ring and actually earn it this time. The game added Austin Reeves, aka Hillbilly Kobe, who was pretty impressive in preseason. I thought he's going to be looking to fill an Alex Caruso type of role. Given the presence of Bradley, he probably won't be asked to do a ton early on, but yeah, we'll see. Generally, the Lakers, positions are a mess. Reeves played point guard in college, for what it's worth. Avery Bradley played, when he was with the Lakers, he was technically the point guard, but LeBron did most of the ball creation. But I think the presence of Russell Westbrook might throw a wrench in that. Malik Monk is a two guard, one guard, similar to Kendrick Nunn. I think a bunch of these guys are going to be converted to small forwards. My money, Bazemore for sure, because he's been playing the 3 for a couple of years anyway, despite his 6'4", 195 stature, his official listing or whatever. I think Wayne Ellington probably is going to slide up a position, and Avery Bradley's actually played, I would have small forward as his 3rd position. And Austin Reeves he's got solid size at 6'5". 197 is not his official listing. His official listing is 206. So he's got reasonable size for a 2 guard. There are smaller small forwards in the NBA right now. So that's all something to keep an eye on. And of course, if the Lakers decide to just go big again and play DeAndre Jordan and Dwight Howard at center and Davis at the 4, LeBron at the 3, then we could ignore everything that I said for the last 3 minutes. But let's go on to the Magic. Wendell Carter Jr., he got an extension, but that has not been added to the game like the rest. He was one of the first guys to get his extension, so we can just assume that nobody got their extension added to the game, which is unfortunate because some of the details are already out there. Fultz is going to be out to start the year. Jonathan Isaac is out to start the year. They're both still recovering from the injuries they suffered last year. And Mike Carter-Williams, he had surgery kind of late in the offseason. He's still without a timetable to return. But fortunately, the Magic are loaded on point guards as they got to draft Jalen Suggs. And they still have Cole Anthony, last season's number 1 overall, or number 1 first-round draft pick. Okay. The Dallas Mavericks, they were missing their two-way players. Jordan McLaughlin, who I'd probably have at the 1 rather than the 2. And Eugene Omoruyi, who I'd have at the 4 rather than the 3. Especially, again, this is another team that, they should have redone the positions. Kristaps Porzingis is going to start at the power forward this year. Last year he was at center. He was at power forward for the rest of his career. They're bringing him back to his more traditional position, so that's something that they're going to have to adjust, as the team has 5 centers otherwise. Dwight Powell is expected to be the starting center. For what it's worth, Moses Brown had to make the team out of camp and has the highest rating out of all of these guys. At the very least, Powell should have a higher rating, most likely, as he's going to be the starter. And that is something that they could fiddle around with the intangibles ratings and just very easily fix that. We see Moses Brown has an 85, so that's 60 points above a 25, which is the minimum rating. He's got like 3 or 4 points of overall is being added by this attribute, the intangibles. It doesn't do anything except adjust the overall rating. So if you wanted to seamlessly get Powell into the starting unit over Moses Brown, I would drop Moses Brown's intangibles to the minimum, get him to drop to like a 74, which would have him on par with Boban Marjanovic. And then Dwight Powell, you could boost his intangibles just up a little bit to make sure that Maxi Kleber doesn't start over him or anything like that. Sometimes the game will ignore the primary positions. It's got to do with like the coaching ratings and stuff, and Frank Ntilikina also made the team out of camp. Going over to the Nets. The Nets are one of the 3 teams that I have fully completed in my personal roster, Real 2K rosters. You can find it on the PS4 just by searching Real 2K. And if you are watching this video, you probably have seen me work on how detailed I get with my updates. So the Nets are one of the 3 teams that I have done, and they need a lot of work. As again, looking at their positions, we see David Duke Jr. got added, and Kessler Edwards as a power forward. That's an interesting take. Okay, sure. I disagree, but okay. So those are the 2 guys that were missing. And then looking at the positions, you probably want Bembry at the 3, Javon Carter at the 1, Bruce Brown at the 3, and then you want to swap James Harden and Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving is probably out for the year unless pending any trade, because he won't be able to play any home games this year due to his vaccination stance. New York City, I live in New York. We are not lifting that anytime soon. So pending, he ain't going to be playing unless there's a trade, basically, because it doesn't make sense to have him as a part-time player, especially as like a high-volume player. It'd be one thing if he was like a role player. Like if Patty Mills had to be like a part-time player, it wouldn't be as big of a deal because he's just like another guy that you're slotting in. But when Kyrie is such a huge part of the offense, having a guy like that in and out of the lineup is it's a major disruption to your game plan. So it does make sense to hold him out, and it does pressure him to like, hey, you need to get the vax like the rest of us and be a part of this team if you want to contribute. Otherwise, our hands are going to be tied. So hopefully he gets together. But in the meantime, James Harden, move him to the 1 because he's going to be the starter At the 1, Joe Harris most likely. At the 2, KD sliding down to the 3. And then Blake Griffin sliding down to the 4 with either Aldridge or Claxton as the starter. At center, that's kind of the lineup that I have projected them at. And also, when you look at how their depth chart shakes out, Durant's still going to see a ton of time at the 4 anyway, but they've got Millsap, James Johnson, Aldridge, Griffin, Claxton. All these guys are NBA caliber, rotation caliber dudes. Somebody's going to get crunched on minutes, so it does make sense to slide Durant down a position to open up some PT for the rest of the team, especially since they are, as you can see, with Kyrie out of the lineup and Joe Harris having to slide down. Somebody's got to play the 3. But going to the Nuggets, the only change for them is Peter Corneli. He got added to the game. He was on a 2-way deal. The 2 Jay Greens at power forward is going to throw me every time I look this year. But otherwise pretty straightforward. They're without Jamal Murray for probably the entire season. Maybe he comes back for the playoffs. But similar to the Kyrie thing, it's asking a lot when he's such a traditionally like a major part of their offense. To just like throw him in is kind of like a disservice to him and to the team. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's just out for the entire season. Kyrie Levert is out with, I think, a stress fracture in his back. So he's been snake bit by like random injuries throughout the early portion of his career. But the Pacers are hoping he gets healthy. TJ Warren had a setback. He's still not healthy after missing like all of last year. He probably will be a power forward by the time he comes back, but obviously we'll have to see how that shakes out. And if he's a power forward, he would be most likely coming off the bench behind Sabonis as like a 6-man type of guy. Microwaves to think of like a Carmelo Anthony type of like bench scorer. Malcolm Brogdon, I think he sprained his shoulder or something during preseason, and it was anticipated that he might miss some time. Whatever his injury was sounded worse than it actually was, so he's expected to be ready for the season opener. Zion Williamson won't be ready for the season opener. He had like surprise knee surgery or foot surgery or something during the offseason, and they'll be without him for at least the first week. So it'll be interesting to see how the Pelicans handle being without him, as they are kind of built around him. There's no replacing him. Najee Marshall is most likely going to be the starting 4 in his absence, but look for Brandon Ingram to be relied on heavily, as well as new starter Devontae Graham. Nickeil Alexander-Walker should start as well, and Jonas Valanciunas is a better offensive player than Steven Adams, so maybe he's able to shoulder some load similar to what he did with Memphis. They were without Dalton Holmes, 6'8", 215, and gets listed as the 2-guard. Okay, interesting. And Jose Alvarado, those are the two-way guys that got added to the game. Going back to the Pacers, sorry, I completely forgot. The 2-way guys were missing Dwayne Washington Jr. and Dejan Jarreau. And given the injury situation for the Pacers out of the gate, they might see a little time. They might see some time earlier than would have otherwise been anticipated. Looking at the Pistons, they were missing 3 players. Luka Garza, I don't know why he's listed at the 4, as ditto for Kelly Olynyk, who's going to start at the 5 for this team this year. So both of these guys should be at center, so Isaiah Stewart isn't the only one. Jamorko Pickett is listed as a power forward center. I'd probably have him as a 3, but to each his own. Again, I don't know what the 2K people will be doing. Craig Smith, he's still recovering from an injury he suffered in college. And it's notable that he's on a 2-year, 2-way deal. One of the few players to get that. So that in itself kind of tells me that he's probably going to miss most of the year with his injury. I think it was a torn ACL. And Isaiah Livers, this one baffles me. This is I don't know what they're doing over there in Nevada, but Isaiah Livers was a power forward in college. and he averaged like 2 assists in, I believe, 32 minutes. And for him to not only be a 2 guard, but have his secondary position listed as point guard is trash. Like, there's no other way for me to describe that. That's just bad work, and they should be embarrassed about this. And this is something that I posted on Twitter like I don't know, like a month ago, and it still hasn't been addressed. So I'm just gonna let that sit for a little bit. Connie Cunningham, they got him at point guard. He's expected to start at the 2 guard. This is just your number 1 overall pick. You know, having him at the wrong position, no big deal, right? As Killian Hayes, last year's first round pick, he's expected to start, and Corey Joseph, he started a bunch of games for the team last year also, and he's an established vet. They re-signed him. He's expected to have a backup role. So you've got 2 very clear point guards on this team, along with Saban Lee, who they re-signed to a standard contract. If they paid any attention to the NBA, they would know from the jump that this was dumb. He didn't even play point guard in college. Like, he was kind of like a Luka. Like, Luka's not really a point guard. Normally, he's a 3 that because he's so ball dominant ends up playing the 1. You can get away with playing bigger players next to him, like a Dorian Finney-Smith and a Tim Hardaway Jr. But like, Connie Cunningham isn't in that situation. He's going to be playing with other guys that you would not consider 2 guards. So, all right. Going to Toronto, they were missing 3 guys. If I can find them all. Sam Decker, he makes his return to the NBA after a couple years off. Similar to Wayne Seldon, it looks like they did not port any of his statistical information, but he's a 4-year pro. And realistically, he should have power forward as his primary position. That's the position he played prior to leaving the NBA. He was drafted as a 3, but he ended up being a 4, and that was even before the league kind of got smaller. Nowadays, anybody that's like 6'9", 220 is pretty much being penciled in as a 4 nowadays. But given the depth issues of the team, like the 4 seems pretty logical, especially with Pascal Siakam and Chris Boucher expected to miss. Boucher probably at least a week, and Siakam like the first month recovering from his injury last year. And I would push Boucher to the 5, and then probably Decker to the 4. Watanabe played the 4 last year. Delano Banton's probably more, he's a point guard more than like a 3. And the difference between him and like a Connie Cunningham, for example, is like the actual lineups that are being run. Banton was a 1 because a point guard last year, because he was the actual point guard on the team. Like, the team surrounded him with other guys who clearly were not the point guard, and he played the point of attack on defense as well. And for the Raptors, he's probably going to be fulfilling that role. He's similar to like what was his name? Evan Turner, who came up with the Sixers. Like, he got drafted as a 3, but because he couldn't shoot, he had to have the ball in his hands. So like later, by the end of his career, he was basically an oversized point guard, and Banton's kind of in that archetype to begin with. He's not going to be playing next to like a Malachi Flynn, or Goran Dragic, or whoever's their point guard. He's going to be playing as like a backup, most likely, to those guys as like the 3rd string, and hopefully he develops into something. Let's go over. Oh, and where is he? David Johnson. He got added to the game, as well as Justin Champagne, or Champagne, however you say his name. Going over Houston, they had a little bit of roster shuffling. Daishen Nix ends up taking a 2-way slot. Similar build to Dante Exum, who the team cut. They signed Armani Brooks. They converted him from an Exhibit 10 to a 2-way to a standard contract. He was with the team last year. Eric Gordon's probably going to play more 3 than 2. Kevin Porter's expected to start at the 1, similar to like Marcus Smart with the Celtics. Like, these things have already been reported that player X is going to start at position Y, and 2K, just doesn't. They don't care. So Porter's going to start at the 1, not like DJ Augustine. John Wall, obviously, they're going to hold him out, waiting for a trade. Garrison Matthews got signed to a 2-way after being cut by the Celtics. And Christian Wood, I would switch his position with Daniel Theis. Daniel Theis is probably going to be backed up by Sengun this year. And Christian Wood, the 4, is more of his natural position anyway, whereas Theis is more of a 5, despite his their height. I would say that their strength, like look at their weight, 6'8", 245, that matters a lot more for a 5 than like it does for a 4. Let's go to the Spurs. They were missing 2 players. Jacques Landale came over from Australia. And he's going to be... Yeah, he's got some shooting ability as a stretch 5. They picked up Devontae Kakak on waivers from the Brooklyn Nets and converted him to a 2-way. They cut Al-Farouq Aminu as they were spot over the limit. And it's going to be interesting. They had Joe Wieskamp also on a 2-way. I would have him at the 3 rather than the 2. But I'm sure I'm just like beating a broken record at this point with some of the position stuff. Lonnie Walker the 4th. I currently have him penciled in as the backup point guard because like Trey Jones, I don't think he's healthy or he hasn't really been playing in the preseason either, and they definitely have lineups where neither Murray or White are on the floor. So I've kind of penciled in Lonnie Walker as like that backup guy. With Bryn Forbes back, he's going to be pressed for, and they drafted another 2 guard as well. Like, it's the only other way they can get him on the court. So that's how I've projected the team. The Suns, they brought 1 person into camp and cut them, so nothing to change here. Shamet got an extension, which isn't accounted for. Did it for Michael Bridges. DeAndre Ayton, he did not get extended, which is pretty ridiculous when you consider like he's going to be the second or best free agent on the market. He will be restricted, but he could really cause some problems for the team this year if he wants to. Similar to how like we haven't seen this since Kristaps Porzingis was with the Knicks, and he threatened to basically like he demanded a trade because if he hit restricted free agency, he doesn't need to sign any team extension. Like if you piss him off enough, he's just going to take the qualifying offer, and then the team ends up losing him the following year for nothing. And that's a reasonable threat because a top prospect like Ayton or a Kristaps Porzingis or wherever, they're going to be able to get a max contract. They don't have to have the security. They can rock on the 1-year deal, and it's also 1 year with a no trade clause. They can't be traded if they do that, if they go that route. So like this could be, the Suns could have to move on from Ayton if he's very upset by the team's refusal to give him a max deal, and we'll have to see. Keep an eye on how they perform this season. And also keep an eye on, the Suns argued that Ayton, if you make the argument that he didn't have max numbers or anything like that, like he only averaged, 14 points and 11 assists or 11 rebounds. He did so on, check the field goal percentage. He shot 8% better from the field. He took a smaller role with the team and sacrificed touches in order to facilitate the addition of Chris Paul. He outplayed the MVP in the playoffs, Nikola Jokic, and was instrumental throughout the entire playoffs on their finals run. So, I don't know. Like, I would expect him to, if nothing else, like, I don't have max numbers. Fine, he's going to be a little more selfish this year and go back to, when he was a 18-point scorer and try to average that 20 points so to at least stick it to the team. But that might make the team worse overall because that's going to be coming at the expense of Paul, of Booker, of Bridges. So, oops. We'll see. All right, the Thunder. Vit Krejci, I think he's still out nursing an injury. I haven't paid a ton of attention to the OKC Thunder preseason, so maybe that's incorrect, but he missed all of last year with a torn ACL, I believe. And where is he? There we go. Aaron Wiggins. He's the other two-way player on the team. He got added. I don't believe he's related to Andrew Wiggins, despite the name similarity. Going over to Minnesota, McKinley Wright the fourth was added on a two-way. No other changes for them. Leandro Bomaro he's missing from the out-of-box roster, but 2K added him once he got signed. He was drafted last season and then spent a year overseas. So once he signed his contract, 2K added him. He's the one guy that they did add since the game launched. And again, somebody's got to be moved to the 3. I guess worth noting, Jordan McLaughlin and Jared Vanderbilt, they were unsigned when the game launched. I can't remember if they were still on the team or in the free agent pool, but if you're running with the out-of-box roster, those guys were added later on, so probably not too big of a deal, but they are here now. Dennis Smith Jr., he made the team out of camp, beating out Patrick Patterson, Marquise Chris, and Quinn Cook in order to do so. So he'll just occupy a third-string point guard role with the team. It's probably bad news if he plays a ton with the team because it means that they traded Damian Lillard or that there was some kind of catastrophic injury. So we wouldn't expect too much here. But they also got Trendon Watford added to the game as one of the other two ways. And checking out the Warriors, they re-signed Gary Payton II like an hour ago. So he's not here. They've got Jeff Doughton as a point guard on a two-way. He's really more of a two-guard. I don't understand this signing, to be honest. Doughton, I don't think he's really even shown that he's an NBA caliber player. He came off the bench all of last year in the G League. I think he's just an organizational guy. He started with the Warriors, I think, back in the day, on the Santa Cruz team. But yeah, I can see this two-way spot being given to somebody else during the year. Jordan Poole, I don't think his rating went up. Oh no, it did. Okay, so 2K boosted the rating for Jordan Poole. It was a 73, I believe. Now it's a 76. He's one of the players that was playing very well in the preseason. So 2K at least had the good. There are a bunch of homers over there in Nevada. The Golden State is basically the local team for the 2K team. So usually, their players are either be overrated or they'll be the first team to get attention, and we see. With Jordan Poole being the first player to get their rating adjusted, that appears to be accurate. He's been really good in the preseason, though, 2K quibbles notwithstanding, and he could realistically just replace Klay Thompson in the starting lineup. Klay Thompson hasn't played in 2 years, and he's still sidelined, so who knows what he's going to look like once he comes back. Jordan Poole will be 2 months into starting, at the very least, by that time, so we'll see. But certainly Poole looks poised to have a most improved player caliber type of season, or if he were coming off the bench, he would be a dark horse for sixth man of the year. There's a lot of Jordan Clarkson in him. He could definitely put up big numbers off the bench if he was in that role. But in the meantime, he is starting next to Steph Curry. I would have Kuminga at the 4. Defensively, he can't play the 3 at all. He's really bad at moving his feet. And Iguodala, you know what? Watching this team a little bit in preseason, I've got him as the actual backup point guard because that's really what he's been doing on the court. And that would be not a crazy thing to say, really, because, like, if you remember, Sean Livingston, he played the 1 for a number of years as an oversized point guard, backing up Steph Curry. So for Iguodala to come in and fulfill that role, I don't think that's, like, anything crazy. So I'd probably have him as a 1 point guard, small forward, power forward. And he came into the league as a 2 guard, so really anywhere 1 through 4, he's capable of playing. The elite side have it the 5, as they don't have anybody. James Wiseman is still out. Probably going to miss the first 2 weeks of the year before he and then has to get into game shape. So we'll see. And either one of Otto Porter or Juan Toscano should probably be a small forward in the interim, swapping him with, like, Kuminga. But that leaves us with Washington. They claimed Joel Ayayi from the Lakers on waivers, converted him to a 2-way. Or he already was a 2-way with the Lakers, so they just claimed him as a 2-way. But, yeah, they are a little thin at the 2, as KCP has been starting at the 3 in preseason because Roy Hashimura has been out with personal reasons. He's not expected to play for, like, the first couple games because he basically missed the entire preseason. And he's played, every game that he's played in the pros has been as a starter, so I don't know if they're comfortable bringing him off the bench, but they have depth at the 4 to compensate, considering Kyle Kuzma also slid over to fill that void. Dan Gafford, he got an extension yesterday as well. That has not been accounted for. It means that Thomas Bryant becomes a little bit expendable. Maybe he gets moved later in the year as he hasn't really been able to stay healthy, and the team already has Montrezl Harrell kind of cemented as a backup, though certainly they could move on from him as well at the deadline if they want to commit to Gafford and Bryant as just their centers of the future. But there you have it. That is the 2K roster. If you want to check out what I've done with my 2K roster, again, you can just search Real 2K. And it should pop up. I'm going to upload my opening night roster after the conclusion of recording this video. So yeah, quick little preview there. And you can follow me on Twitter at Real2KInsider and subscribe to me on YouTube, please. Like this video, etc. All that helps. I plan on releasing a lot of content this year. Stay tuned for some of the details on that. But otherwise, enjoy opening night. I'll see you guys later.